I have breaking news. A federal judge has ordered Vice President Mike Pence to testify before a federal grand jury in regards to his conversation with President Trump leading up to January 6th. Welcome back to Passionate Takes. As you can see, this is a huge victory for Special Counsel Jack Smith. He has been trying to get the testimony of Mike Pence and his conversation with Donald Trump leading up to January 6th. Let's take you back a little bit. Remember, towards the end of President Trump's presidency, there was conversation, especially after the November election, he has with Vice President Mike Pence. There was conversation between the two individuals talking about irregularity with the voting, with the election, also possible election fraud. And we know what happened on January 6th as hundreds and thousands of people stormed the Capitol. This is a huge win for Special Counsel Jack Smith. The reason for that is the Department of Justice, led by Merrick Garland, appointed Special Counsel Smith to look into what led up to January 6th and people storming the Capitol. Like I said on my introduction show, whenever you tune into my show, I want to give you perspective that other news media outlet may not cover it, or they may not talk a lot about it. Okay, what we saw on January 6th. Do you remember when President Trump was out on January 6th talking to his supporter? There was hundreds and thousands of people in the audience listening to President Trump and other people that were close to the former president, including some of his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Now, on that day, President Trump, let's go back. Before that day, President Trump put on a call to Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and tell her she must have security and officers ready, at least 10,000 ready to be deployed to the Capitol. Because we all know all these jurisdiction is with the Speaker of the House and also the Mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser. However, they did not heed what President Trump was telling them. He said there would be thousands of people that would descend into Capitol Hill. And that happened, and they descended to hear President Trump. During that speech, he talks about how he was treated unfairly by the media. They always don't cover him correctly. And we know prior day to that the elections, there was irregularities. I know a lot of people, maybe you may have heard this in the news, where they were talking about harvesting ballots. There was also about ballots. There are ballots that come in way after hours and was still being allowed to count. There was people pulling ballots out underneath desks and all these other things. And Trump's lawyers were going around on news media and saying this. They also went to numerous Congress around the country, state Congress, where they would share this information. But on January 6th, President Trump told his supporter, I understand once they hear him finish talking, giving a speech, that they are going to peacefully march over to the Capitol and make their voices heard. Now, if you watch on other media outlets, they tend to often, especially the mainstream media, they leave out the word peacefully. He said that in his speech. But now, what the federal judge have handed down, now he says, I want you to be able to Mike Pence, to get the testimony from him, because we know there was conversation that they had with the president, and that on January 6th was when they were going to certify the election of 2020. And during that day, we all know this, other media outlets were covering this. They said, can and would Vice President Mike Pence send back some of these ballots, and that he would not accept them because, say, for example, the state of Arizona, he would not accept certifying that state, and he would send it back to the governor, and so that the state legislature can take a look at it. But that didn't happen. I understand there were senators, for example, like Ted Cruz. There was also Josh Hawley that stood with the president. They said they were going to be saying that we need to talk about this in Congress, that there was going to be a debate. We're also going to talk about the reasons why we can't accept certified elections for certain states because of irregularities, what people saw in the states from every American citizen that went and watched and vote at these polling locations. They say we have to look into this, a possible election fraud. But as we know, that didn't come to fruition. Sure, some of the senators did object to certify the election. You would need one senator and one representative. And that happened in some of the states, but it did. Once they went and they debate, they talk about it, it failed. So they went up and ultimately certified the election for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I think now we know what a polarizing figure Donald Trump is. And you have the news media outlets that are always constantly finding new ways and all these investigations. Do you remember about the Russia investigation? The Russia hoax, as Donald Trump likes to call it? They spend years costing millions and millions and millions of dollars to look into something that turned out to be a nothing burger, right? So they bought a dirty dossier from Hillary Clinton, and now they're going to indict and say there was collusion between the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump's campaign, colluding, working one another, and that ultimately the Kremlin wanted Trump to win the White House. End up nothing happening in that case. There wasn't anything there. And now we get to this case, and we see that Special Counsel Smith is now finally able to, he's been wanting the testimony of Mike Pence. And Mike Pence, just to let you know, he wrote a new book, and he mentioned some of the things in regards to his conversation with former President Donald Trump in his book and what happened on January 6th. Mike Pence, as far as I know about him and what I have gleaned from his time in Congress, Mike Pence is an individual with high morals. And he wasn't going to do anything that was going to go against the Constitution. So that shouldn't be a shock to anybody that Mike Pence didn't act the way that Donald Trump wanted him to act or the way that Donald Trump's supporter wanted him to act. He did what he thought was in his purview, in his wheelhouse, things that he can legitimately do. But you saw that President Trump really pressured him, and now what Special Counsel Jack Smith wanted him to do is he wanted him to divulge into these conversations that he had with the former president about the conversation. At any time, did Donald Trump admit to Mike Pence that he lost the election fair and square to Mike Pence, and that he was going to seek the Oval Office in another 4 years? Did he say that? And I think these are some of the questions, and what other things did Trump and possibly his lawyers force Mike Pence to do, to act, and he didn't do these conversations? I know it was described to one of the special assistants that worked with Ivanka Trump, described that conversation that's very heated between the two men. Because up to this point, you have to understand, Mike Pence has been in Congress. So President Trump is an outsider. He chose Mike Pence as his running mate. I'm sure of this. It was recommended to him, a certain individual, and he ultimately went with Mike Pence. And that worked out well for him. They both won. He became the president, Donald Trump did. Mike Pence became the vice president. They did a lot of great things. I think whether you like the President Trump or not, one thing you can't argue is he did a lot of great things. The economy was booming. Crime rate was down. We were energy independent for the first time in 75 years. Foreign countries started respecting us again. Everybody is paying their fair share. Okay? We are looking out for our allies. We are protecting our country. Was there something that President Trump could have handled differently? Sure there is. Hindsight is always 20/20. And I think President Trump would be the first one to admit that. But the problem is here is towards the end of their presidency, what we see with the former president and Mike Pence is their relationship really sour. Because when they were up against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, like, well, this is it. We're going to win re-election. And we know that didn't happen. And so, therefore, anytime we know after the election, it is the job in the Constitution of the Vice President to certify the election's results. And I'm sure Mike Pence was very disappointed that he didn't win re-election along with President Trump. But the conversation, I noticed there, and news media, I wouldn't share this with you, they wouldn't talk much after that, okay? The conversation went from, the relationship went from didn't know each other to working really well, listening to Mike Pence's advice. Mike Pence would tout President Trump's leadership, how he was great. It was great working with him. They became kind of like brothers, looking out for one another. But then it got to a part towards the end of their presidency. I'm sure neither one of them wanted this, but it really soured. President Trump really soured on Mike Pence. He didn't like how he handled it. He thought he should have been tougher. President Trump, you know this about him, whether you are at his rally or if you're at home watching or you're against him or you're for him, what you know about President Trump, he likes fighters. That's what he likes, okay? Now, he may not always, if things don't go his way, he wouldn't always be happy about it, I'm sure. A lot of people tuning in my channel right now, you can relate to this. You want things to go your way, and if things don't go your way, you throw temper tantrum, you throw fits, and when you are the president of the United States, that gets magnified a million times. And so a lot of people wonder after that day, could we have prevented January 6th? Could that have happened? Could the things that went on? But I think one thing we need to mention, and they are looking into that investigation, but what I know about today, this conversation, and I'm sure Mike Pence will appeal this somehow. Because at the end of the day, I think he feels a sense of loyalty to Donald Trump. But even that then, there's a sense of loyalty to the Constitution and God that Mike Pence will put first. And then his family, then Donald Trump. But I think there's certain things that I don't think this is good, the end of this. Because if we go by this news alone, that this federal judge have mandate that Mike Pence testify before the grand jury and give his testimonies and his conversation with Donald Trump leading up to January 6th, I'm sure Mike Pence will appeal this. And even let's say he doesn't appeal the decision, there are things that he may not discuss and share once he is before the federal grand jury. And like I said, it's something else. As we are looking forward into 2024, we know President Trump is running again to become president. They are looking at this issue. And now there's we really need the testimony of Mike Pence. We really need to know what President Trump said in this conversation. He has released a book, Mike Pence did. He went on some conversation. He maybe have mentioned some of the conversation that he had with Donald Trump. But he haven't really divulged and shared intimate detail about those conversations. And I think that's what Special Counsel Jack Smith is hoping with this ruling, that he is able to get Mike Pence before a federal grand jury and that he has to tell the whole truth, but the complete truth about everything that went on in all his conversation with President Trump. What do you think of this? Do you think that this is another way for them to suppress the former president as he is seeking to become president again? Or do you think this is something that Mike Pence, they feel a national duty to his country, that he's like, I have to testify, I will go and tell them what they need to hear? Will he fight this in court? The way that I see this play out is I see Mike Pence, he will go before the federal grand jury and he will testify on this issue. But what I don't envision him, I don't think he's going to share any earth-shattering news that we don't already know about this issue. But like I said, Trump is always railing against investigation. What is your take on it? What do you think about this issue? Is it again another way for the media and these people who claim they are not biased, they are only speaking about the law, about the truth, about fact-finding, and here they are again trying to divide, trying to find different ways to hold down a former president. We'll see how this play out. Tell me what your takes are on it. Okay, I have shared with you what I think will happen in this case. Like I said, we'll see what Mike Pence says in the next few days. But I just want to leave you with this thought. Mike Pence have mentioned that he thought about this issue in the past, and he says January 6th is a dark day in history. It's a day that he remembered vividly in his memory. And it's what I want to let you know so that you can make this decision. What do you think of what just went down to when a federal grand judge has said that Mike Pence has to testify before a federal grand jury about his conversation, the conversation that he had with President Trump? Make sure you tell your family, friends, relatives, neighbor about Passionate Take. Come back to this channel. We will have a great time. We will learn with each other. We will be informed. We're going to laugh together. Okay? Before you sign off, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give my videos thumbs up. Also hit the bell notification so every time I drop new content, you are notified. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.